All right, the regular meeting is called to order at 7 p.m. The regular council agenda for November 17th was accepted as presented. Would somebody like to make the motion? Councillor Shields, all in favor? Motion carries. Get right into our reports, and we'll start with Neil, the Chief Administrative Officer reports.
Okay, so in terms of the status report, we don't have any huge changes other than the items that are in process from the last meeting, the traffic bylaw, the communications policy and procedural bylaw. Are there any questions?
Any questions regarding the status report? Not seeing any. We'll go to capital.
So I'm going to do it that way. Largely, we're getting through most of our plan for this year at this point, fortunately. I'm still awaiting the roadway assessment, which is being completed by an engineer. The new membranes were installed the week of November 3rd, and they're making a huge impression and a huge dent in our infiltration troubles. I think the operations manager will have more to report in the near future. The other thing I wanted to mention, it was just a comment. We did the pool liner this year, which buys us another 10 to 15 years on the useful life of the pool. But I'm just making a little note that encourages council to look into long-range planning for a replacement outdoor pool within 10 to 15 years in terms of location, conceptual design and fundraising. The 1964 vintage pool is in remarkable ongoing condition, and that's to everyone's credit who's looked after the pool. But its age should not be forgotten. And in recent years, new outdoor pools of a similar size in places like Vulcan and Fort Macleod have cost in the order of $5 to $6 million. So it's a community discussion that seems far away, but I'd encourage some groups to start thinking about that before it's upon us or it's upon the community in a few years' time. And with that cheery, go ahead. Oh yes, the something else that I'll be bringing in the near future when we're discussing capital. The highway LED signs are not in great shape. They're starting to show their age, and we forecast that last year. There are some decisions that will need to be taken in the near future regarding those signs. And depending on what council want to do, it's not going to be cheap. It'll probably involve the public realm reserve to find a solution to that. So that's that.
Okay. Any questions regarding the capital plan status? Councillor Saab.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question on that storm management. On that last page, I'm sorry if I'm a little bit late. On page 5, just scroll up to it. Just a little more. Right there on storm management. Top of the page. It says complete. So that's the we had the Westview Pond checked over. Were we doing something with that this year?
That's going to be in the proposed capital plan for 2026 to dredge it. It's very, very shallow at this point in time.
No, I was just wondering if we are doing something in 2026 that as far as budget goes.
Administration will be proposing the project, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Miller.
Under buildings, the community center energy upgrades have been listed. And I know we've discussed this several times in the past, and some suggestions that I made received some significant pushback. but I'm gonna bring it up again because $100,000 is a lot of money. And I wonder if any of the energy studies that we did actually shows the benefit of upgrading the thermal value of the building from whatever it is to whatever it could be. And is there any payback to get to that $100,000 back? $100,000 in energy could be, I don't know, could be 10 years, could be 20 years, could be 2 years. I'm just not sure. So my questions to start with is, did any of the energy studies that we entertained, that we had done, did they indicate what the value would be by upgrading from whatever it is to something else? That's the question.
No, none of the studies that were done told us that. We were gonna have to have an additional study done to tell us the payback time to do these upgrades. So I believe the decision was, let's just go ahead with the updates. The pricing for adding insulation to that foundation wall is gonna be a lot less than what's budgeted. We're just working with the contractor to determine when that can be done. We don't know if we can still do that this year or if it'll be in the spring.
Okay, so we've had that discussion about insulating the exposed foundation, which makes good sense to me. But even that, I don't know what the cost of that upgrade would be, so it would be interesting, maybe before we just get final push on this, to let's understand what the cost is for construction for that upgrade compared to this budget of $100,000 or whatever the revised budget could be. But I just personally, I'm quite concerned about spending $100,000 on this old building without understanding whether or not there's any real benefit or even long-term payback to that $100,000.
Counselor Miller, do you think it would be of value maybe to get an information brief on the community center, and then we can discuss it a little bit more as we're going into capital planning season?
I mean, whatever council thinks is appropriate here, I just.
Well, I just don't want to weigh into the operational aspect of it. I want to focus on the budget aspect of it. So I'm wondering if there would be value of it
Well-
coming back and we can really focus minds and just get an update on the current status.
We're missing numbers.
Mhm.
So if we had so if we had the cost of construction
Mm.
in front of us, along with this budget, then perhaps we can make an educated guess or educated agreement, if you will, about whether or not we spend that money.
Okay. Is that manageable, Neil? Okay. Do we need a resolution as such? No. Okay, thanks, guys.
So,
Thank you.
Counselor Mitchell.
yeah, but we've had this conversation. Like, you actually, you mentioned the thermal imaging, stuff like that. You could see where the heat was coming out. So Clayton's saying that if we want actual numbers to justify, it's gonna cost us money to get those numbers. So, I'm okay. Obviously, we're gonna need a quote. We're not just gonna let everybody know that our budget's $100,000 and try not to spend it. So, but we gotta go through the quoting process, right? You know, to get more than one. So, I don't wanna stall this, because if we start doing this definitely is not gonna get done this year. If they gotta come back with, obviously the quote you gotta come back with, but I don't wanna spend any more money on the.
Yeah, I think that's
Energy
why
efficiency.
we're just seeking an information brief,
Okay,
not
good.
an RFD, just an update on where things are.
You sold me last time, so.
May I?
Yes.
No, you're right, Councillor Mitchell. And all I want at this stage, we're not doing any more studies. We're not hiring any more audits. I totally understand that. I agree with that. All I'm trying to do is match up these two numbers. Is it really only 50 grand versus the $100,000 budget? That's what I want to know.
Okay, that's easy. Perfect. Any other questions? Not seeing any. We'll go to your report there, Neil.
So highlights from up to October 31st. We had further regional water discussions with the consultant. I had an introductory meeting, excuse me, with the new LRSD superintendent, Sean Beaton. And we had a couple of additional meetings. If council has any specific items they would like to see on agendas, I say this most meetings, please contact us to discuss. In terms of additional information, bylaws and policies, we've got the revised procedures bylaw, draft new traffic bylaw, revised communications and public participation policies, and we've been working on property tax variance objectives policy review and amendments. During the consultation period for the traffic bylaw, questions may be asked, and I wanted to note this around whether Nanton requires a dangerous goods regulation or not. This is still being explored by our DEM, and it might be, if it is developed, it would likely be a separate bylaw that would require provincial ministerial approval. So we haven't forgotten about that. We are still looking at it. But it would be a separate regulation.
Any questions? Not seeing any. We'll go to Clayton's.
Okay, so there's the accounts payable report for October. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Another busy month, lots of money being spent, obviously, as you can see. In terms of activities, we completed a benefit survey with staff, which provided us some good feedback for potential changes in 2026. We've finished the advertising for the franchise fee changes. So next steps will be to send that on to AUC, the Alberta Utilities Commission, and then that, as long as there's no issues, that'll be in effect January 1st. We received our 2026 insurance renewal. Unfortunately, there's a pretty large increase coming, so we will discuss that more in budget talks. And then we just working on an interim audit. We had our quarterly review with Scotia Wealth. They handle a good portion of our reserve funds. We're starting work on 2026 capital budget for discussion at Committee of the Whole next week. And then work for changes over here, we're at 60% complete. And we actually just found out today we're actually ready to go to building permit application. So that's where we're at.
Okay. Councillor Miller?
Sorry, I had another dumb question. I noticed in the drawings, it shows that we're doing a ramp up front for handicap access. And I guess the question goes mostly to our development officer. We're changing the footprint of the building somewhat. So do we need a development? Are we gonna get saddled with a development permit application for that?
Already done, sir.
Well, thank you very much. That's.
Yeah, so the good news is that handicap access ramps or wheelchair ramps are exempt from setbacks. So they will fall under the building code for meeting specifications that way, but it wasn't a variance requirement in the development permit application.
Councillor Zopp?
Thank you. I had a question on the payables. Did we skip over it or?
No, we're just doing them right now.
Oh, no,
It was all part of his report. Maybe we did go a little bit too quickly.
should I ask the question or wait till?
You can ask the question
Thank you.
100%.
I'm just curious on the 5th item, where it's the community design strategies, and I understand we got a grant about the heritage building, but what's the $18,800 been spent on so far?
Consulting time. We've been engaged with them now since August. So they've been working very, very diligently because we have a very short time frame to do this project. So yeah, they are very hard at work. Lots of billable hours.
What are they doing though?
Well, so the project is to provide us with a report that will be presented to council at the end of January. It's basically a heritage building inventory project. So they've been investigating potential heritage properties in Nanton, and right now they're working diligently on drafting statements of significance for that.
Yes, the most significant outcome will be a small number of, well, not such a small number of statements of significance that if property owners wish could lead to some protections and some opportunities for their buildings. This is hopefully just the first round of that. The town may pursue funding in the future for more, but you need heritage consultants to do that work.
Any other questions? You're good? All right, anything more for Clayton? Not seeing any, we'll move on to operations. Anything you wanted to highlight or Bill wanted to highlight, Neil?
Well, I think anecdotally, I think he acknowledges it in his report a little bit, but he's going till the end of October. We've definitely seen some good progress, as I mentioned earlier, since the new membranes were installed in the early part of this month. We'd like to see the amount of water we're producing go down further. We still think there's quite a degree, there is still a high degree of possible water loss. And that's going to, the work in terms of tracing the sources of that will continue probably for the next few years. I don't have anything huge additional in relation to his report to add. Are there any questions?
Councillor Miller?
Sorry. So this report shows us how much treated water was sent to the town's distribution center. In the past, we've also had information about how much we've been able to bill compared to how much has been sent out. Are those numbers still available?
Yes, we maintain an Excel file with that and intermittently circulate it. If council wants to see that again, we can send an updated file around. Yeah.
Could I see that at the next meeting then,
Sure.
please? Thank you.
Councillor Saab?
Thank you. Just recently, as they're working on the water line from the school toward 26th Avenue along 24th Street, I believe, they shut the water off, but it didn't affect nobody but the house on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Did they discover a new loop? Did you figure that out yet?
I don't believe they 100% did, and we ran out of budget for this year for this kind of activity. We are going to revisit it next year. The suspicion is that there is more buried infrastructure in the ground in that area that we do not fully understand, and we're going to have to expose it.
Thank you.
The early 1980s were not kind to Nanton.
All right, any other questions for Bill's report? Not seeing any, we'll move on to Jordan's.
So during the school break, we opened the arena to give the kids some activities, and we hope that what we could provide was of use to some. AB Daly and JT Foster are utilising the arena for their hockey programs and active living programs. Curling has importantly signed an addendum that we've put forward to the club, and that brings the lounge, with the exception of the bar, under the control of the town, which facilitates greater levels of public use in the curling lounge. It doesn't facilitate greater levels of alcoholic beverage availability, but it does provide seating, which is what I believe a lot of users and stakeholders were looking for. Any additional questions?
To start. Perfect. Any questions? Not seeing any. We'll go on to Georgina's report.
There isn't too much I needed to highlight. I think it was a fairly straightforward report. We've got the Mountaintop Food additions to the food processing plant as one of the issued permits for that time period. We had I think a fairly successful, we're still not finished with the street filming on the downtown area. So far, so good, I think. I've had some positive feedback actually come back from us that it's going quite well. So they'll be back in town for December the 1st. But let's hope that the weather that they want is cooperative.
Any questions for Georgina? Not seeing any. The fire department. Chief Dosman was unwell tonight. Otherwise, he would have been here. But was there anything you wanted to highlight there, Neil?
Not beyond what's in the chief's report. We are, I think, as time goes on, we're going to have more discussions with council about the aspiration to expand a little bit the size of the fire hall and start working on some plans for that potentially. Beyond that, I don't have anything to add this month.
Okay. Any questions? Peace officer report.
So, most importantly, I'll note the high level of traffic tickets issued by our peace officer in the last little while. He's been fairly active on the highway, and we hope that that has a safety impact. The RCMP did ask that in the last few weeks that he up the levels of enforcement around the temporary school zone. So that will have an impact as well on warnings and tickets. We're in the time of year where the amount of bylaw enforcement complaints tends to slide a bit. It's always more in the spring and summer. So the traffic focus is pretty strong right now. He did note there that he did do some joint force operations work with the town of High River, and he's also looking into whether we could do a some joint assistance with town of Okotoks on Friday, but that's not confirmed yet. That's for their light up type event.
Okay. Any questions? I have to say that at least twice a week, people mention the decoy vehicle and the locals with contempt, but the people traveling through get it and it's appreciated and it always catches them. So I think it's been quite effective.
Yeah, no, and just to underscore the mayor's comment there, that it's not intended to catch locals or encourage locals to slow down. It's for those passing through town who don't know any the wiser.
Yeah, and it certainly has been effective for sure. Okay, emergency management department.
So we have a few basic emergency management training programs for some of our newer employees going on right now to get them up to at least the 200 level. There is to be a tabletop exercise in the near future. Did we have a confirmed date for that? No, not yet. And we'll be looking for an advisory committee meeting in the near future. I think the Dem's working on dates for that if she hasn't already.
Okay, perfect. So we'll go on to the council verbal reports. We'll start with myself. Right after the election, we went right into Councillor Strong and Councillor McMasters and I went to a Net and Quality Life Foundation strategic planning session, which was held over 2 days. And they've got a lot on their plate, and like a lot of organizations struggle with kind of the funding and looking for a lot of different partnership opportunities. And I think the report's going to be coming out in February. Maybe I'm making that up, but yeah, there'll be some big conversations with the town here, I imagine, in the next year. Neil and Clayton and myself met with the RCMP regarding the THRC move, and seeing what that will look like for the 2026 capital budget. Of course, the Remembrance Day ceremony, and then most recently, all 7 members of council attended the AB Munis conference last week in Calgary. It was fantastic getting to know all the members of council and what we're going to look like as a team. But of course, more importantly, the sessions that we attended and the networking that was done. I actually attended 2 really good sessions. One was on brownfield lands, and they're really trying to different, unique ways to reclaim these lands. And I'll send that information. And I took lots of notes. I thought you'd be interested, Georgina. And I also took a session on economic development, and the town of Strathmore had a really good presentation, and so did the provincial government on different options for funding ECDEV in Alberta. So that's was for me. We'll go on to Councillor Zopp in alphabetical order.
I didn't have none of the committees I'm on have met, so went to the Alberta Munis. It was very good, lots of networking. Besides that, my usual tasks of things that I attend. We did go to the land banquet. No, I urge everybody to go because it's about being good stewards of the land. That's what that's all about. So that's about it.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Zopp. Councillor McMasters.
Like Victor, none of my committees have met yet, but also at the AB Munis, and it was really good. And I also did a couple sessions. We did one on the FCSS, which was interesting. I don't think it really gave us a bunch of information to be able to bring back to the Nat quality of life or anything here. Just how much money that they get and how much they want, and the difference is substantial. And then we did another one about being uncomfortable in uncomfortable situations or whatever. And it was really good. There was lots of questions and kind of figured out your own personality and how, like, if you were a challenger or collaborator. And yeah, it was really interesting. I was happy to have been able to go and definitely get to know everybody on the board here a little bit more. It was nice.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Not in order, but over the last month, after I finished all my campaign stuff, which has nothing to do with council, I did attend a meeting of MPC here a week or so ago. Wasn't necessarily a heavy agenda, but it was certainly an interesting application that we kind of digested and chewed it up and spit it out and came up with a resolution. I think we got where we needed to go with it. I did also attend the AB Munis conference. My main takeaway from that was the same seminar that Mayor Handley attended. My takeaway was a little different, though. The key focus for me was whether or not as a community we were ready for investment. And my takeaway was, no, we aren't. They focused on 3 separate elements, that being electricity and land. And there you go. I forgot the third one already. But
Water.
Yes, thank you. How could I forget that? But the conclusion in my mind was, we're not ready for investment. We don't have any of those 3 things that they said were important. So that was a great takeaway for me, and it's something I hope to bring back to council and have that discussion on an ongoing basis. I also attended the Legacy of the Land banquet in, where was that? Fort Macleod. And it was very well attended. The speaker that night was the guy who was mauled by a grizzly bear. And it was a pretty interesting story. It almost makes me want to stay out of the bush, but he, quite an impressive story that he had to tell about surviving his experience with the grizzly bear. And further to the note about is our community ready for investment? Just today, I read the information about Kaylee lot sales, and I won't go into the details, but I want to thank our CAO for sharing that with me because I found it very interesting. The information contained in that report, I think, is something that this council definitely needs to address, and we need to have that discussion, which may make our community a little more interesting for investment. I think there's some opportunities there. So if you haven't read that report that that Neil shared, I'd encourage you to read that. It was good reading, and that's pretty much it for me.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Mitchell.
Yes, nobody's met yet. Next week, couple, but yeah, the AB Munis was good. Sessions I attended the same as the Brownfield. Same. The other one was infrastructure maintenance and City of Lloydminster, Minister Lloyd spoke, and it's unfortunate. It's not unfortunate, but it's when you're sitting there from a town of our size, and the town that's telling you how they're getting it done is considerably larger. They have a committee of 8. They have 3 dedicated personnel just for infrastructure. They have a coordinator just for infrastructure maintenance. But what I did get out of it is we do an incredible job with what we have. We are going down so many correct paths on how we're trying to get that. Even the little things like today when Neil says we discovered a valve or but we're logging it. We are setting future councils up with an inventory and better mapping and everything. We're kind of playing catch up. But it did reassure me that we are going down the right path. Just what was presented. So kudos to administration and what have you. The other thing I did present the resolution, and thanks for posting on Facebook.
Naturally.
Yeah, because my daughter posted it, and now I've got hockey dads from Fort Mac going, I support you. So I'm here. So, but it was good. Again, the networking, not to go on, but you will find the more of these you go to, sometimes it's almost feels like it's a bait and switch, some of the sessions, because you get all excited about the session and you go there, you're going, boy, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And you'll see that because you'll see people get up and walk out, and that's just cutting bait. So, but again, it's one of those things, but there's far more good than not quite what you thought. So hang in there, and I'm glad everybody did come. So,
Yeah, no, it's great.
so, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mitchell, and thank you again for reading the resolution, and yeah, that we got 92% support and nobody spoke against it, so it was very well received.
Too. So thank you, Neil. So I did bounce off the resolution. What I said off Neil, a lot of it was plagiarized from Neil. So thank you.
But a similar resolution was brought forward by the town of Innisfail
Yeah.
last year, and it was defeated. And Neil worked hard to kind of restructure it and capture it in a different way that obviously resonated this year with municipalities. So no, it was good. And Councillor Shields.
So I started out this month with Alberta Southwest, and that really was just an understanding of how their meetings run, what they are trying to accomplish and what they do as a board, which is really quite exciting to see the economic development side of the MD and these small communities and what potential there is there for us to grow. I did the Legacy of the Land Banquet, something I look forward to each year. I've been doing it for a few now, and the speaker this year was very interesting. I took a lot away, not necessarily the attack itself, but the mental health aspect that he had to deal with and the effects of that. And then Alberta Munis, a lot to take in. I'm understanding that they had a record number for registration this year. So that was exciting to see, and neat to just, the conversations that were had and to realize that everybody's just your normal person, right? They all get up in the morning and they all go to their jobs and are passionate about their communities. And I think that was the biggest takeaway I had from that. And then a few more board meetings this month, and that's about all. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shields. I'm wondering if we should move your mic a little bit, like just down a bit, so that it's pointed more towards you. Might help. Councillor Strong.
So I wasn't able to attend the Alberta Southwest Regional, so Aaron attended that in my place. And I got the emails and all the information on that, so that was great. Orsk, we have the Christmas social and the meeting on December 4th. So I'm registered for that, so we'll be going down. The intermunicipal collaboration framework. I'm not exactly sure exactly what that is and haven't heard anything of it.
You'll hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I've touched base with all of my liaison groups. I also attended the Alberta Munis convention and I thought it was excellent. I thought it was great for the team building of this group because there were people that I didn't really know all that well, that I know a little bit better, and I was glad about that. The sessions that I attended was advocating for small towns and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I'm a challenger, if anybody wants to know.
If we didn't already know.
Well, just in case it wasn't clear. And what else did I do? Oh, thriving instead of surviving for towns. And it was interesting. I wouldn't say that I probably got a lot of notes, but there was a lot of good information that kind of resonated and yeah, we'll be able to take forward. What else? I'm trying to think. I think that's about it. It was really good and yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you,
you.
Councillor Strong. At this point in time, we'll need a motion that all written reports and as recorded on the agenda for November 17th, 2025 be received for information and filing. Councillor Zopp, all in favor? Motion carries. The councillors all having read the minutes, there being no errors, omissions, or corrections, the minutes of the organizational meeting of the Council of the Town of Netton held November 3rd, 2025 were accepted as distributed. Who would like to make the motion to accept those minutes? Councillor Strong, all in favor? Motion carries. The councillors all having read the minutes, there being no errors, omissions, or corrections, the minutes of the regular meeting of the Council of the Town of Netton held November 3rd, 2025 were accepted as distributed. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Miller, all in favor? Motion carries. Okay, we will go to business arising from the minutes, request for decision on the communications policy.
So the administrative recommendation is that council adopt the revised communications, correspondence and social media policy as presented, incorporating a new section 5.9.1, clarifying the town's ability to edit video recordings of council meetings for accessibility, clarity and privacy compliance purposes. If council wishes further discussion, we can of course defer it to a future meeting.
If you recall, we discussed kind of the points and the highlights from it at the last meeting, made some recommendations. So now it's come back to us with those recommendations. Is there any other questions, thoughts, or considerations after reading this policy? I'm not seeing any, so I will require a motion to approve the communications correspondence and social media policy as presented. Who would like to make that motion? Counselor Mitchell. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Kind of went rogue there. I didn't really read the full resolution, but I think we got the gist. Request for decision on the draft bylaw for the procedural bylaw. Neil?
A recommendation is that council give first reading to bylaw number 141825, the Town of Nanton procedural bylaw, being a bylaw to regulate the proceedings of council and council committees. It's a modernized procedural bylaw that aligns with current legislation, reflecting best practices at this time. Of course, once we have some new regulations, which may come in the new year at some point, we may have to make further changes, but this brings us into compliance.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have questions regarding the procedural bylaw that's in front of us today? Okay. Without having any questions, we can go through all three readings this evening, and if everyone's good with that, move to read Town of Nanton Bylaw 141825, a bylaw to regulate the proceedings of council and council committees for a first time. Councillor Zopp, do you have a question?
Why are we doing the first reading when the second one is we have to pass the bylaw to amend it prior to first reading? Shouldn't we be doing that first? Number 2?
If we see an amendment, right?
If there was an amendment to the bylaw that's presented this evening, we would have made that amendment and then.
I didn't read it that way. Thank you.
All right. So move to read Town of Nanton Bylaw 141825, a bylaw to regulate the proceedings of council and council committees for a first time. Councillor Zoff would like to do first reading. All in favor? Motion carries. Move to read Town of Nanton Bylaw 141825 for a second time. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor McMasters. All in favor? Motion carries. Unanimous consent to read Town of Nanton Bylaw 141825 for a third time was granted by council present. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Miller. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Move to read Town of Nanton Bylaw 141825 for a third and final time. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Shields. All in favor? Motion carries. All right, thanks, guys. Okay, we'll go on to new and unfinished business. The request for decision on property tax variance objectives policy. Neil.
So this is really an introduction to this tonight. Council, I would imagine, will choose to perhaps wait for committee of the whole for a bit more discussion around this. We have two recommendations that it's adopted as presented or referred to committee. The purpose of this policy, this policy, is that it outlines council's objectives and direction with respect to the specific property tax varying mechanisms contained in the non-residential tax incentive bylaw 2024 and the property assessment subclass bylaw from 2024 for ease of annual review and public transparency. It's simply that there is an element within that bylaw where you have a varying power that you can change by resolution annually, and it's that time of year where you make decisions whether to change it or not change it. So council needs to reset or reaffirm certain tax rate adjustments. The policy document spells out the objectives, the rationales and adjustments involved without having to go much deeper. It's becoming increasingly important to look at this every year as more municipalities progressively adopt fairly different non-residential and residential tax varying mechanisms within the Municipal Government Act's capabilities. So right now, you have the vacant non-residential property subclass set at 125%. You have the small business property subclass set at 100%, so there's no discount at the moment to eligible properties. And the multi-unit dwelling property subclass, which was introduced last year, is currently set at 0, so there's no discount at present. And just for discussion, I have suggested 150% for the vacant non-residential subclass, 90% for the small business property subclass, and 50% for the multi-unit dwelling subclass. We are foreseeing one or more properties becoming eligible for the punitive vacant non-residential property in subclass in 2026. So that's why there's a recommendation that that rate be increased further in order to make the fiscal consequences for long-term VNR, as I put it in my report, sufficient to bring a property owner to the table to discuss their future plans. That is, if that is still a priority for council. It's really important, if you want to be clear, if you want to discuss specific potentially impacted properties, that should take place in a closed meeting under Section 19 of the Access to Information Act, because it could be harmful to business interests. We have proposed a change to the small business property subclass, as we've already noted that statutory declaration completion rates fall if there is no confirmed financial benefit to the property owner. It does not offer a direct benefit to tenant businesses. If this is not a council concern at all at this time, we can leave it at 0 until such time as the stimulus associated with that power is deemed to be needed or desirable. It's just that we won't compile a very good list of eligible businesses because they won't complete the statutory declarations. We also propose activating the multi-unit dwelling property subclass discount as a way of marketing the incentive to prospective developers in the eligible part of Nanton, which may also assist with generating developer interest in the remaining phases of Westview. The financial risk is presently minimal, as the incentive only becomes available to a property at completion or occupancy. So you'd be far, far away from it ever hitting the books. But if we have the percentage activated, we can at least market that benefit. So deferring adoption of subclass rates until February or March will likely impact how many property owners complete the 2026 declarations. And those have to be in our hands by January 31st every year, according to the bylaw. So it's encouraged that this be done soon if changes are desired, but you can take your time with this, and I'd imagine you want some time to further discuss this and think about it and look at the bylaw and so on.
Mm-hmm. And Neil and I chatted about this. We felt it was good to kind of ease you guys into this as we start to get into budget season. It is a little bit, it's a bit to kind of wrap your head around it. It's taken us a lot of years to get there, but we thought it was important to introduce it early on. And as Neil said, the earlier we get it out to our property owners, the better chance that they submit their declarations and everything's done in a timely manner. But the nuts and bolts of it truly are to encourage vacant properties to be occupied and no longer vacant. So many years ago, 5 years ago, we developed a bylaw that essentially we could put a punitive tax on a vacant property, which hopefully would encourage them to do something with it. There's a lot of parameters around it that defines it as vacant, but ultimately it's up to council every year to determine what that rate would be. And so in past years, it all depends on, the economy, different situations, but last year it was 125%. Equally, we wanted to offer an incentive to people that do have occupied businesses. That's where the small business property incentive comes in. And typically it's about a 10% discount that we offer. And we try to balance that out with the punitive tax so that it kind of pays for that incentive offset. But we thought there should be more of a reward if you're actually operating your building or your property. And then recently, last year, as Neil said, we wanted to encourage developers to build more residential or rental properties in our town. And so we introduced this multi-unit dwelling property, and that's where we would offer an incentive to that developer. So that's kind of the council perspective on it, but we'll open it up for questions. Again, if we're not ready to make a decision tonight, that's totally fine. We can continue the conversation next week at committee of the whole as well. Councillor Miller, do you want to start us off?
Thanks. At the multi-unit dwelling property, I just heard you say rental property, but does it also apply to multi-unit condo type property where there would be more than one dwelling in a building that's purchased and not for rent?
The bylaw is presently focused on rental.
Okay, then I think we need to make that very clear, because here it's not, that this is.
But the
for-
bylaw would be, this is just a summary of the bylaw.
I understand that. I just, when we get to that point though, I think it needs to be clear, because I sure didn't see that it was for rental only, but thank you.
Councillor Zopp.
Thank you, your worship. Just so I understand that second one. So any of the property meeting, are you talking vacant land or with buildings here?
Completed buildings.
So do we not give them a discount already in our taxes?
No.
That they file and we give them a discount and
No. There's an incentive a separate incentive if they were to substantially renovate their building or add an addition or a new construction. There's a separate tax incentive to encourage improvements on the building, but this is separate. This is for an operating occupied business or building, I should say, that would get a small discount. In the last couple of years, we haven't offered any discount, but the recommendation from administration is a 10% discount this year.
just the whole trouble about the discount to the business. Yes. we're
To the
trying-
property, not the business.
Pardon me?
To the property, not the business.
Right. But the property owner, we're offering a discount to get the more business onto that property. At whose expense? Who's picking up that 10% is your housing side. So
The
part of that is also the property owner doesn't even live in town. So they get the benefit. But it's the ratepayers of the homes that are paying for it. That's the problem I have trouble with.
And I think the intention is, and this is why we've had it at 0% the last few years, is that the intention is that the vacant punitive tax would pay for that 10% for the occupied buildings. So the ideal scenario, and it might not always balance out, Clayton's shaking his head, but hopefully it's close that that it is the vacant property tax that is offsetting that.
And as far as I know, it hasn't balanced out once.
Neil, would you like to
Thank you.
speak to that?
I think the best thing we can do is at committee of the whole is take council through that bylaw, the two bylaws actually, just to maybe provide a bit of a detailed explanation as to how those are laid out. council has the choice to leave that at 100%, basically no discount, and rely on the non-residential tax incentive instead for construction, which is a very different objective. The objectives around the small business property subclass is more about rewarding businesses, properties that have occupation by a business, by the owner or by a tenant with a number of employees. It's a fairly different objective that is quite limited in terms of how we can tweak it, because it's a provincially defined property subclass to a degree. But it really is up to council, and that's why it's being introduced tonight. Further discussion will probably be required, because it's not they're not easily explained quickly, but you are going to have to decide if you're going to stay put or change in the next couple of months.
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate that. And yeah, I know in the past we've had those numbers that kind of just give us a bit of a glimpse on how that could balance out. So if we can just have a rough idea, even what that could look like at committee of the whole, that would be great. Do we have any other initial questions for this? I'm not seeing any, but so I'll need a motion. Move that the Chief Administrative Officer bring the property tax variance objectives policy to the November 24th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting for further discussion. Could I have a motion? Councillor Strong, all in favor? Motion carries. Okay, item 5.2, request for decision on the bylaw 141325, the School Enhancement Committee loan bylaw. Yeah. Or Clayton, I suppose.
So administration is requesting council pass second and third reading for this bylaw. At the October 6th council meeting, it was presented and first reading was passed. After the meeting, administration prepared the required public notice of advertising for the bylaw and has had it posted on the website ever since. As per the MGA, the notice was published for a minimum of 2 consecutive weeks. And as per the MGA, electors were advised they may petition for a vote on the bylaw within 15 days after the 2-week period. No such petition has been received, and so administration is bringing the bylaw back to council for second and third reading.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions around this bylaw? Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, so I mean, the numbers that we've got in here, but that number is going to change. So as they fundraise. So that number, what we will be, I don't like to use the word on the hook, but we're responsible for, will drop. Does that have to, I know it says up to that amount. But after a year, like is it worth revisiting and lowering that? Or will it not have any effect at all?
I guess we could, I don't know if we.
So if it's not needed, it's kind of it's an update for us to see exactly where we're at. And I guess we'll get that reports from the enhancement committee too. So we'll have an idea where we're going to be sitting. So
Yeah, like in 2 years' time, the
Yeah.
committee might have all of it, or they might have half of it, and they might come to the town and say, we need
This
to
is where
cover
we're at.
this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we can certainly provide updates.
Yeah, it twofold. It as you get closer to a goal, people get excited to see that goal. So it may aid in fundraising for the committee, and it lets us have an idea that we backed the winning horse, kind of a thing. So yeah, if we could ask them to kind of give us a pretty good update, I think they're gonna anyway, but I don't know if we need to make it official.
Is that something we would need to make official, or we just understand that they'll be presenting on a regular basis annually to see if we need to adjust the amount? Is that the best approach?
That's the best approach.
All right. Any other questions around this bylaw? I'm not seeing any, so we'll go into move to read the Town of Nanton bylaw 1413 for a second time. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor McMasters, all in favor? Motion carries. Move to read Town of Nanton bylaw 141325 for a third and final time. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Mitchell, all in favor? Motion carries. Okay, request for decision draft bylaws 141525, 141625, and 141725, the development authorities. It's just cleaning things up.
That's precisely it. We just need to do a little bit of housekeeping on three important bylaws that establish a development authority and a subdivision authority for the town of Nanton. Under the MGA, these are under council's purview to do this by bylaw. So we've got a complete repeal and replace of the development authority bylaw, as well as land use bylaw amendment, or pardon me, as two bylaw amendments. One for the designated officers bylaw, and then another for the land use bylaw. And these are corrections just to refer to the proper section of the MGA.
All right. Anyone have any questions before we get started on this? Not seeing any. We've got a lot of resolutions coming forward, so everyone will have to participate. Move to read bylaw 141525, a bylaw to establish a subdivision and development authority for the town of Nanton for the first time. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Miller, all in favor? Motion carries. Move to read Town of Nanton bylaw 141525 for a second time. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Strong, all in favor? Motion carries. Unanimous consent to read Town of Nanton bylaw 141525 for a third time was granted by all of council present. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor McMasters, all in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Approved third and final reading for the Town of Nanton bylaw 1415. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Shields, all in favor? Motion carries. Move to appoint the Town of Nanton position of Planning and Development Officer as Development Officer in accordance with Section 3.6 of the Town of Nanton Subdivision Development Authority Bylaw 141525 and any amendments to that bylaw. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Mitchell, all in favor? Motion carries. Moving on to bylaw 141625, resolutions to amend designated officers bylaw. Move to read bylaw 141625, a bylaw to amend the designated officers bylaw for the town of Nanton for the first time. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Zopp. It's your turn. Councillor Zopp, all in favor? Motion carries. Move to read Town of Nanton bylaw 141625 for a second time. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Shields, all in favor? Motion carries. Unanimous consent to read Town of Nanton bylaw 141625 for a third time was granted by all of council present. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Miller, all in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Approve the third and final reading of the Town of Nanton bylaw 141625. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Strong, all in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Bylaw 1417, resolution to amend the land use bylaw 138924. Move to read bylaw 141725, a bylaw to establish a subdivision and development authority for the town of Nanton for the first time. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor McMasters, all in favor? Motion carries. Move to read Town of Nanton bylaw 141725 for a second time. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Zopp, all in favor? Motion carries. Unanimous consent to read the Town of Nanton bylaw 141725 for a third time was granted by all of council present. Who would like to make that motion? Counselor Miller. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously, and approve the third and final reading for the Town of Denton Bylaw 141725. Counselor Mitchell, all in favor? Motion carries. We did it. All right. Clayton, the information brief 2026 for the operating and capital budget.
All right. So just to provide council with a little bit of a timeline for the 2026 operating and capital budget process. So per the MGA, each council must adopt an operating and capital budget each calendar year. And it's also now a requirement that each council have a 3-year operating plan and a 5-year capital plan in place, in addition to the current year budget. So the current practice has been to approve the capital budget for the upcoming year in the fall. For the operating budget, current practice has been to adopt an interim budget for the fall for the upcoming year. Approval of the capital budget in the fall obviously is important because a lot of the capital purchases and projects require tendering and pre-planning in order for the projects to be completed on time. The operating budget could also be passed in the fall, but as there is almost always a need for amendments in the spring, administration has asked that the current year budget be utilized as interim budget until the new budget is passed. So the proposed timeline, next week at Committee of the Whole, will bring capital budget for you for discussion. And then we'll bring back an RFD at one of the December meetings or both. The operating budget can also be discussed at the Committee of the Whole with a request to pass the current 2025 operating budget as interim. So once we do that, we'll take the 2026 operating budget that's already within our 3-year plan kind of as our base, and we'll start to work on that for council consideration. That process usually starts in February and finishes in March, sometimes in April. So we've got time. The capital budget is the big one, and so that'll be the biggest discussion next week. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Clayton. Yeah, we've got a lot coming up over the next couple of months, but ultimately the final budget being approved in end of March, early April. So I thought it would be advantageous to have a bit of a timeline so you can know what to anticipate over the next few months before we get the ball rolling next week. Does anyone have any questions? Not seeing any, we'll just move right on, and we'll move on to item 5.5, the library board appointee. Neil?
So the recommendation here is that council rescind the appointment made by resolution number 210-25-1103 to the Nanton Thelma Fanning Memorial Library Board, and appoint an alternate member of council in accordance with eligibility requirements set out by the library board. We inadvertently ran into a bit of a conflict situation. It was no one's fault, and we need to select a different member of council.
Oh, perfect. We have a different member of council all lined up, and that would be Councillor Mitchell. Thank you. Who's been on that board for many years. So at this point in time, we'll have one resolution that we will rescind. Resolution number, did you want to read this out?
My council moved to rescind resolution number 210-25-1103 and appoint the new member of council.
So we'll appoint Councillor Mitchell in accordance with the eligibility requirements set out by the library board. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Sopp? All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, the next thing we have is some correspondence. We have a package from the Old Man Watershed Council requesting contributions from the town of Denton. In years past, we used to contribute to the Old Man watershed, but I think we stopped that about 3 years ago. Would you say? They will be coming as a delegation to the first meeting in December, but we wanted to put this in front of you guys now so you have a bit of context before they come with their ask on the first meeting of December. So that's why that is there for today. We don't need to make a decision tonight on that request. And then the next thing we got was a congratulatory letter from the Minister of Municipal Affairs. So with that, we'll need a motion to move into closed session at 9:10 pursuant to Section 1972 of the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M26, and the Access to Information Act, ATIA, as follows. Item 7.1, the Westview Lots, ATIA, Section 29, advice from officials, and item 7.2, municipal buildings, ATIA, Section 26, disclosure harmful to intergovernmental relations. Who would like to make that motion to go into closed? Anyone? Councillor McMasters, all in favor? Aye, motion carries.